In the fourth episode of Dandadan, we're introduced to a giant enemy crab. I didn't know this at first when I started reading the manga, but the creatures and characters in this story are actually real-world ideas that Tatsuyuki Nobu incorporated. They're cryptids and urban legends that he populated the world of Dandadan with. In this video, I'm going to review these ideas as they exist in real life to discover the history behind them that Tatsu brought into his story and made his own. Just a heads up, this is going to be a basic intro to the idea and won't be going super in depth. If you want to know more, I encourage you to go dig into the research for this stuff yourself. So, without further ado, let's get into it. This sudden, inexplicable giant crab probably has a lot of people thinking it must be some kind of alien again, considering what happened last episode with the Flatwoods monster. But believe it or not, this crab is actually a spiritual being and is based on a real belief in Japan. There is a species of crab that goes by the scientific name Heikeopsis japonica, but in Japanese is referred to as the hikigani, which translates as the Heike crab. This crab happens to have a pattern on the back of its shell that resembles the face of an angry samurai. If you ask me, it looks more like the kinds of masks you see samurai wear into battle, but I guess that's close enough. This is a phenomena known as Pareidolia, which is the tendency humans have to see human faces in inanimate objects and other non-living things. I first learned about this watching a show called Ghost Adventures with my mother back in the day, where in the early days of that show, they explained that a common mistake that happens a lot in supposed paranormal footage is that people see faces floating in the air, but this actually is just a result of pareidolia occurring when the noise pattern in the dark footage happens to end up resembling a face. Anyway, this crab is often nicknamed the samurai crab because of this. Now, to understand the mystical belief that's become attached to these crabs, we'll have to do a bit of a history lesson. During the Heian period of Japan's history, which ran from 794 to 1185, and which may sound familiar to Jujutsu Kaisen fans, the Taira clan was one of the 4 clans that dominated Japanese imperial politics. Because kanji have multiple possible readings, another name for the Taira was the Heike. Using the alternative reading for the Taira kanji, which is Hei, and the kanji for extended family, which is pronounced as Ke in this circumstance, which explains the name of the crab. Towards the end of the Heian period, the Heike were the dominant clan in Japan, but were being challenged by the Minamoto clan, also known as the Genji. For the same reason, the Taira were also known as the Heike, only in this case, the second kanji being used is Ji, which can also be pronounced Shi and translates as clan. The struggle between the two escalated into a 5-year war referred to as the Genpei War, again named for the alternative readings of the kanji used in the names of the Taira and Minamoto clans. From here on, I'm just going to call them the Heike and Genji clans to keep things clear. Just remember, Taira equals Heike and Minamoto equals Genji. Back on the topic of the war, it eventually culminated in the Battle of Dan no Ura, which occurred on the 24th of April, 1185. The Heike went into battle led by the child emperor they controlled, Antoku, and his grandmother, Taira no Tokiko. Though they had controlled Japan for decades, the Heike went into this battle heavily outnumbered by the Genji, and effectively faced certain defeat. Once Taira no Tokiko became aware of this, she took Antoku and jumped ship rather than allow him to be captured, which led to their drowning. Later, Antoku came to be worshipped as Mizu no Kami, the Shinto god of water, due to this turn of events. The majority of the Heike generals and clan members followed suit in despair, leading to a victory for the Genji. This began the Kamakura period of Japan's history, and led to 700 years of shogunate rule across multiple periods in Japan, when Minamoto no Yoritomo, the elder half-brother of the presiding general for the Genji forces, Minamoto no Yoshitsune, who, by the way, is the same Yoshitsune the ever-popular demon/persona from the SMT franchise is based on, became the country's first shogun. By the way, those 700 years would end in the Bakumatsu era at the end of the Edo period, where a war was fought to end the Bakufu, the Japanese word for the military government, and dethrone the shogun of the time to return Japan to imperial rule. For more information on that, there's a bunch of video games set during the period, such as Like a Dragon Ishin and Rise of the Ronin. Okay, so with all the history explained, now to talk about how this came to be associated with the crab. Following the events of the Battle of Dan-no-Ura and the rise of the shogunate, eventually an account of the events of the Genpei War in the form of an epic poem was compiled sometime prior to 1330, which came to be known as the Heike Monogatari, or the Tale of the Heike. According to Wikipedia, this tale claimed that the reason for the angry samurai faces on the shells of the crabs was due to vengeful spirits of the Heike warriors who perished in the Battle of Dan-no-Ura, who will carry an everlasting grudge for their defeat, reincarnating into the crabs. Due to this belief, many Japanese, or maybe even most, Wikipedia claims most, but that's not something I'd feel comfortable claiming without first-hand experience, and I'm neither Japanese nor have ever even been there, actually don't eat these crabs, and crabbers will even return them to the water if they spot them when trawling. As with many folk beliefs and spiritual stories such as this, the belief spread, grew, and shifted over the years, leading some to believe that spirits in general turn into freshwater crabs, as Momo mentions in an easily missed throwaway line that isn't even followed up on at all in terms of further explanation. Of course, the overall concept of this particular crab is followed up on later when Seiko explains that the tunnel Turbo Granny resided in was the site of several murders of young girls before TG the OG moved in there, and the spirits of those girls attracted her to comfort them, which is why she resided in the tunnel and why the crab was working with her. The implication is that the crab itself became an earthbound spirit. No, this has nothing to do with the video game. Or jibakure, which is a Japanese term for spirits who are bound to a physical location, typically where they died, much like the concept of a disturbed spirit haunting a location that we have in the English-speaking idiosphere. In this case, it was an amalgamation of multiple spirits all connected to physical existences that ended in the same way at the same place, which may be an indication as to why it manifested as a giant crab specifically, offering a physical representation of the combined spiritual pressure of all the girls together. This also explains the inexplicable human features present on the crab, which just gives it a nice little touch of body horror. While I'm here, I'll quickly touch on the additional tactic employed by Turbo Granny of summoning a bunch of spirits from a nearby cemetery to possess a bunch of the citizens and essentially turn them into pseudo-zombies to chase after Okarun and Momo. I'll be honest, I have no clue what's going on there. Turbo Granny herself seems to have possession as an ability amongst her repertoire, as that's obviously how Okarun can transform, and manipulation of that ability also allows him to use her powers. But I have no clue how exactly that's meant to extend to just normal human spirits purloined from a nearby cemetery, possessing vast quantities of people. This is a situation where I think this was solely done with the most half-assed of hand waves, just to get the cool visual of the possessed people chasing after Okarun and Momo in vast droves, and kinda tap into that zombie movie imagery, because they literally don't do anything else and cease to be relevant as soon as they're not on screen anymore. I don't think it's even followed up on at all, if I remember correctly, despite the fact that Momo brings up that the citizens can't see the crab, so you'd think Tatsu would have given some thought to address how all these citizens reacted to getting possessed, essentially blacking out for several minutes and waking up in a different place than they last remembered being. Anyway, that's all I have for you in this episode of The Truth Behind Dandadan. Hopefully you enjoyed this little review of the real-world ideas behind the show. Feel free to drop a comment if you can think of any other info I didn't manage to find. If you did enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe as well so you can support the channel and see what else I put out. Until I see you next time, Stay safe and have fun.